YouTuber. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Breaking the Blocks. My name is Rachel Pearman. It is lovely to have your company here, but can I ask you a little favour, please? If you enjoy the content today, would you mind giving me a little ding ding thumbs up? It really helps me push the content out there into the algorithm. And you never know, someone out there might just need to hear this message that you've enjoyed hearing today. Of course, I would love to have you as a subscriber as well of the show. And if you hit the notification bell, you'll know when I'm posting new content. And please do leave any comments because as you will see, I always reply to every single one of them. So let's talk about this episode today. I'm interviewing a quilter, an artist called Sarah Hibbert. You can follow her on Quilt's Cornerstone on Instagram. The details are below. Now, what I love about Sarah is she creates these really beautiful quilts. They're so modern and she uses linen and lovely kind of subtle colours, but also she can make things like fried eggs. And I just love her fun approach to life, her fun attitude. But you know, her quilts in some respects are quite bold and dramatic and really kind of pushing the envelope. But Sarah herself is the opposite. She's a complete dichotomy. She's quite humble, she's quite shy. So of course I asked her why she felt this innate shyness, why she felt this innate need to be quiet. So let's see what she said. Sit back and enjoy the episode. Well, hello, greetings to the lovely Sarah Hibbert. I know her as just the lovely Sarah, who is a sweetheart, really. You are, Sarah. You're so lovely. Welcome. It's so lovely to have you here. I always love our little gossips and our chats, but it's nice to have you on the podcast. And of course, I had to have you on the podcast because I've been talking to some amazing creators, some amazing artists, and you are one such person. I should say that, you're welcome, Sarah. I should say that I met Sarah, or I saw you, first of all, when I was going through Instagram, as I always do. You know, singers, they have sometimes a great singer will have a really unique voice. Like I always think Bono. There's no one that's got a voice like Bono. You know what I mean? You hear his voice and you go, oh, that's Bono. There are so many voices that sound quite similar. They can sing, they can hit the notes, but they don't have that something about them. Well, I think that's what I feel when I look at your work, is that it has something about it. It actually has a stamp of you about it. It's like, I think if I had lots of work in front of me and someone said, find the Sarah Hibbert pieces, I would go that one, and that one. I would absolutely know. Thank you. That's what I love about your work when I first saw it on Instagram. And of course, I approached you at the Festival of Quilts. And then that was it. The rest is history. Here we are working together, talking together, going to America together. Ooh, yeah, it's exciting. Fantastic.
No, it's a little bit of serendipity when you popped into the gallery at Festival of Quilts. It was great. And it was just instant. I thought, yep, I like this woman. She's good. She's a good egg. So that's good.
That is part of it though, isn't it though, Sarah? It's energies that meet energies on the same level. And if you're on the same level in the same place, it will work out, I think, when you actually meet people.
And I'm glad you mentioned the connection with Bono, because there's something about Bono. Okay, he's not great to look at, but I know I shouldn't say that. I've always said, I bet he's fantastic in the sack because... Because it's his passion. And he married on the 21st of August, 1982 at 3:00, as did I. But I married over here, he married over there. So,
well, I mean, you're almost together, aren't you, Sarah?
I don't know what he said, or should I say Ali Hewson? I think she'd string me up. But anyway, okay.
I think Ali probably does find him quite attractive. That's his wife, by the way. I used to have a huge thing about Bono. In fact, one of my first boyfriends, called Nigel, looked like Bono. He had the hair. Honestly, it looked like him. And do you know something, Sarah? He dumped me.
How dare you? I think out of all of them, it's the edge that, is more pretty.
That's very nicely brought me to that point, Sarah. You were just saying there about the edge and actually that he is the attractive one, the pretty one. And I was just about to say, yes, he's the more shy and retiring in the group. I think he has this kind of very this quietness about him. I absolutely get that. So this is what I was going to say about you though, Sarah. You are the edge in terms of you might have these showy quilters out there, like Bono. Yeah, Bono's not a quilter, but you might have the showy people. And then you would be kind of standing there at the back. But Edge is an incredibly talented guitarist, and you are an incredibly talented quilter. So I want to know, where does this come from with you, Sarah? Because you are so humble, you're very shy, which is amazing because your work is bold, it's colorful, it's strong. What's the juxtaposition there?
Well, thank you for saying that, and I do appreciate that. I do feel a little bit shy about that. I think I was brought up. My parents. My father was a graphic designer, and he was very out there and knew an amazing amount of artists and all sorts of people, which was fabulous to grow up and listen to and hear his stories. My mother was always tagging along behind. They were joined at the hip. But my father was very ill when I was born, and consequently my grandmother, my mother's mother, had been a widow for many, many years. Well, since my mother was 10, actually. She came to live with us. Well, she was a staunch Methodist, read her Welsh Bible each night, had a picture of John Wesley by the bed, her pin-up. And so I learned, I think, my manner from her, that she was always, don't be too full of yourself. Don't be too full of yourself. And that's the thing that still plays in my mind, and a little bit of imposter syndrome as well. I haven't got to where I am without the people that have helped me. And I will always say thank you to them first before taking any praise. And that's just, I worked at the Savoy in my catering career. I absolutely loved being there. And again, mixing with pot washers right up to Lord Attenborough. I did his son's wedding. To me, a person's a person. I've never worried about rank and things like that. But I don't want to step on anybody's toes. And I appreciate everybody, I think. But I think maybe quite a bit of my grandmother is still sort of stuck in there somewhere.
It's really interesting what you say there. And I can absolutely see that in you, that you get on with, as you say, from pot washer through to whoever. Not that we're demeaning pot washers, but I know what you're saying in terms of
the chambermaids. When I was a housekeeper at the Westbury Hotel, I worked at the High Park, then the Westbury, then the Savoy, and the best fun ever was some of the chambermaids. I was a housekeeper, and it was bizarre. It was great fun. So it's funny. Friday, I went to visit a friend down near Chichester, and really lovely sweetheart of a lady, and there was another lady with us as well, and we were all walking along. She took us down onto the seafront, and we were walking along, and every person that came towards us, I said, "Morning, hi, how are you? All right, Happy New Year." And we walked past, and these two ladies said, "You just talk to everybody, don't you?" Whereas this lady said, "I live here, I don't ever speak to anybody." But I'm happy to, I love people. I don't care what they do or what their position is. I'm just interested in people and how they're doing and if they're okay, really.
I think I've told you this story before of my friend Jackie. I was in a lift with her in ITV
Yeah, she
many,
did.
many,
Yeah,
many, many, many years ago.
yeah,
Yeah, but she
yeah,
reminds me of you with
yeah,
that, because she would just talk to anybody. And Vincent Price walked into the lift,
yeah, that's
and
right.
she just
Yeah,
literally just said, "Well, hello, Mr. Price. How are you today?" And he just said, "I'm very well, my dear. How are you?" And then he walked out, and I said, "How do you know him?" She said, "I don't. I just wanted to talk to him." But it's a
yeah.
great quality to have. I have to say, Sarah,
Thank
I'm the
you.
opposite. When I go on walks and things,
Oh,
my husband is the one who will say "Good morning" as people walk past. I
no,
don't. I tend to just look
no,
down at the floor or at the trees. I don't know why I don't talk to
no.
people when I'm on the
Yeah,
roads, but I do love
yeah,
talking to people.
yeah.
People are what makes life interesting. Okay, so how did you make the leap? Because obviously you've talked there about working in catering. How did you make the leap into your quilting practice? Because obviously you are now gaining accolades, you are gaining attention, people are giving you lots of praise. You are a successful quilter. Just in case, I know you'll sit there in a
Thank
minute
you.
and go, "Oh no, I'm just playing at it." No, no, no. Author, quilter, accolades. So where was the driving force within you to start putting your head above the parapet and get yourself out there?
I've always been playing around, cutting and sticking, doing my collages, doing all sorts of playing around. Then I had my daughter, in 84. Unfortunately, we had problems having her, and we lost 2 or 3 after her. So I took myself off to an evening class to do patchwork and quilting, and did one, I think it was a couple of weeks evening course, and then I joined up for a term. And I was very lucky enough to meet a group of ladies that belonged to Pear Tree Quilters. So they very kindly asked me to join, and I learned a lot from them. And they were always my sounding board. Yes, my quilts were different to what they made, but we all had our individual stamp. I've always loved colour. I've always liked maybe a bit of a quirky style, or change a quilt around, or whatever. So I've always just sort of done my own thing. I've, hand on heart, I think the whole time I've been quilting since 86, I think I've only ever followed one pattern. I'm hopeless. I start reading it and think, oh, I can't do that, and I put it away. So I've always done my own thing. Then in 2016, I joined the Modern Group of America, the Modern Quilt Group, because I was really interested in the likes of Jackie Gearing and people like that, and all sorts of names, and their quilts really spoke to me. And I ordered, after the 2016 exhibition, I ordered the magazine and was reading through it, and it was incredible. And I said to my husband, I would really love to go to this. They have an annual exhibition. So I booked it on my own, booked the hotel. I was talking to a very good friend of mine, Pat, who lives in the States. I'd met her a few times in Chicago through a friend of a friend. Pat asked if she could join me. So we turned up, and that was Savannah, and QuiltCon changed my world. It totally changed my world. The door opened at 10 o'clock. I walked in, and there was Jackie Gearing, my hero, who has now become a good friend. But I went up, it's Jackie Gearing. And she went, it's Sarah Hibbert. She didn't know me from Adam, but she'd read my lanyard. And then the whole week we were there, she kept saying, are you okay? And I thought, nobody knows me. I was very lucky, and I have been lucky each year to have a quilt accepted each year there. And I just bounced up to people. I said, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from London. I love your work. And I ended up making such a good group of friends. And that's what carries me through each year. That 1 week at QuiltCon, it lifts my spirits. And that's when I thought, yeah, okay, I can put a piece in and be proud of it, which that's what changed me, really, I think. It's people's generosity and willing to help and enthusiasm. And there's so many different quilters out there, and different techniques and different disciplines. But at the end of the day, quilters are a nice bunch, and I'm incredibly privileged to be part of that group, really.
I think it's you being genuine that makes people want to help you, because you're not wearing a mask. You're not standing there going, oh, yes, I'm super confident. I know what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. I think it is that humbleness. It is that, that genuine thing about you that makes people want to help you. And I think to some extent I've had that with me, particularly in the last year. I think I'm growing more into myself and growing more confident with being in this world, being a part of your world. Because at first I very, very much felt like an imposter, really, because I thought I'm not a quilter. People are not going to accept me. But then I think people are realizing that my passion is to bring people together.
Oh yeah, your sense of community is fantastic.
Yeah, that's my aim. So Sarah, just going back then to this, I think there's a thread. You see what I did there? There's a thread running through your quilting history, which is, I think it's a healing space for you, being in the quilting world, because it's interesting. And I think it is for a lot of people. You mentioned there that it was sadly after some miscarriages that you decided to join a quilting group. So how is quilting a healing experience for you? What does it do for you?
The friendships I've made helped me through some troubling times, or just not necessarily troubling in my world. I'm happy with my world. I'm happy with my lot. But it's exchanging ideas as well. And I've always said that I'm a nosy historian. I love history. And I like to know, well, how did they get there? How did they get there to there? And it's the same with some quilters, how did they make their break? Or not necessarily because I want to follow suit, but I'm just interested of people's makeup, if you like. I lose myself with my, if I'm stressed at all or worried about VAT returns, my day job, and things, I can just take myself, sit in front of the sewing machine. And the last 2 days I've been working on a quilt, and I've been in such a happy place.
So I know you and I, Sarah, have talked about a quilt that you've been working on, and you said to me you will never ever finish it because
Mm-hmm.
it's your hand quilting that you are working on. And you said that you just want to keep going until the very end, and then you said you want to be wrapped up in it eventually. Let's talk about that quilt then, because although you make a lot of pieces and you're creating a lot of pieces and finished pieces that go out there into the world, what is it about this piece that makes you want to keep hand quilting? That to me says that it's some kind of meditative effect that it has on you.
It's been sitting on the side of my sofa for, I don't know, 15, 20 years maybe. I've always been fascinated by Bauhaus architecture and design. And there was a weaver called Gunter Stolz before Annie Albers. And she, unfortunately, Walter Gropius wasn't a very nice man and sacked her because of her beliefs. So she went off into the world and she did her own thing. She never really got the recognition, but I came across her and I love her weaving, and I replicated one of her weaving pieces into patchwork with just mix match of fabric. And I've been stitching that. There's a lot of the blocks. I think I've got about 8 to go, I think. There's a lot of the blocks I look back now and I think, why did I quilt it like that? That's just horrible. But then I've decided I will keep it in because I remember at that point I was on that particular journey or whatever. And I just sit and I chat. I do talk to my quilts. Like I talk to this one a lot. I have Sjogren's, which is a connective tissue disorder. And some days I'm not so good and some days I am. And a lot of the time, even though I wasn't feeling up to much, I would still quilt Wild Blue. It's called Wild Blue because I listened to John Mayer a lot, and that was one of his tracks. But I can tell by looking at it exactly how I was feeling at that time, and that some of the stitches are a little bit wonky. And I have said in talks, so people do know, there is a bit at the top that the stitching is completely wonky because I was watching Bridgerton, which I call Bonkerton, and that was when he took his kit off. So my stitches are so there's little bits in there, but I envy. I hope I'm never being a green-eyed monster, but I envy people that keep journals or work journals of how they've put their quilt together, what fabrics they've used, where they are in the world when they did it, or some artists, and you look back on their notepads and things. I've never done that. I've got no notes whatsoever on any of the quilts I've ever made. So when I have to do my artist statement, if I'm putting something into QuiltCon, it's a real sort of head scratching exercise. But then when I look at the quilts, I know exactly where I was when I made that, and I know exactly where I was in my feelings or what was going on in the world. Yeah. So yeah, stitching into it. Nobody else will read it, but
But it's important, though, isn't it, to express feelings? I think that that's a really important thing as a human being. There are so many people who do not express their feelings. They shove them down as far as they can. And I'm not saying that's a wrong thing. I'm saying that, a lot of people in this world have a lot of childhood traumas. And I've been reading over Christmas the Matthew Perry book.
yeah,
And I know you listened to the audiobook.
yeah, it's
And
fantastic.
such a good book, isn't it? And I think that something that was really interesting that came through that book was when he said about his childhood and how he developed abandonment issues, which is what
Mm,
made him, in inverted commas, a needy person. And I think when you look at his life and you read that book, you realize how easy it is to be affected as a child by
mm.
things. And I
And
think sometimes
yeah,
people think that in order to have childhood trauma, you've got to be seriously, physically and emotionally abused, which
Yeah,
obviously is
yeah,
horrific. But I think even if your parents have not quite been present with you, it will create these issues within you, which then means that you won't express your feelings as an
no,
older
you
person, or
carry
you won't be
something.
able to understand your feelings.
Absolutely adore Catherine Hepburn, and I have done for years. The February she died, in the June we actually went to Old Staybrook, which is where she was, and I was very lucky to be able to see her house up close before it got sold and things. And but last night there was absolutely nothing on television, and I said to my husband, because I've got a DVD of a documentary that Catherine Hepburn said, and she was saying, and she's just out there, but she was saying that she had an incredibly happy childhood, and her parents, even though her father was totally against her acting, he got it in the end, but she had an incredibly happy childhood. But then she actually lost the brother that she adored, that was above her. She had siblings below her. He committed suicide. So, but then she said she had a happy childhood. So there's always something happens in somebody's life. You can't get from A to B without a hiccup or a journey, and that becomes part of your makeup. But I try and be a positive person. I do get very down, and I like to think the only person that really sees me get down is Paul. But I can bounce back quickly as well. The worst, I think the worst part of my being down is I have conversations to myself, and he says that, and then she'll say that, and then he'll say that, and then I'll say that. That's the bit I cannot switch off, but I work my way out of it in the end. And Paul always knows that everything's going to be okay when he hears me, like in the other room, and I say right. As soon as I say right, that means right, I'm on the course, that's where I'm going. And it's the same with quilting. I'll sit down at the sewing machine and I maybe don't know what I'm doing, but as soon as I say right, he says okay, he can back off. He knows he knows I'm going to be okay. I think everybody carries something with them. It all depends whether you want to flip it to be a positive or be a negative. But I haven't got time to be a negative, really. I like to think I want to be I want to be a happy person, really. That's what I want.
Are you able to create work when you are in that, well, he's going to say this, she's going to say that, when that kind of stuck in your head feeling? Can you work? No, you have to wait until you get the right moment and then you're
Yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah. I will start work to try and work myself out, and then I realise it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work, and it's going to end up, the unpicker's going to come up, and and the rotary cutter, and lob a bit off. But it's. I think everybody carries baggage with them. It's just whether you want to share it. My father didn't have an easy life, really. He and he used to offload quite a lot to people, whereas I'm always very conscious of that, and also I think I I don't know, I value friendships a lot, and the older I've got, I'm 65 this year, which, God, where did that go? It went in a heartbeat. I do like telling people I love them, and I do. There are a lot of people I love, and I am, I'm a friend's coming around for supper on Wednesday, and I met her when I was 10, and I used to adore her. She lived right across the road from me, but one summer we spent the whole summer trying to work out to put a can with a string, and then from our bedrooms, but trying to connect this string across the road and over a bit of a park to get in, but I don't have any problem telling people I love them, because there's so many people in my world that I want to thank, really, because they've been the icing on the cake, really.
It's interesting, isn't it? I had a conversation once with someone who said that they found it very hard to say, I love you.
Mm.
And I said, but I've heard you say, oh, I love that book. Oh, I
Mm.
love that piece of music. Oh, I love that film. So
Mm.
why can't you say to someone, I love you? I
Mm.
can never understand that.
Yeah.
People, I'm not saying it's, when I say I could never understand it, I'm not saying it's I'm right and you're wrong, but I do find that difficult because I'm the same as you, Sarah, that I will always tell people. I think I did it on an Instagram comment to you recently. You said something and I
You
said,
did.
I do love you, S.
Oh,
But it's a
dear.
nice thing to
Yes.
do.
Paul's, you know, he's great, and I've got a lot of men friends through work and through quilting, and I'm more than happy to tell them I love them and things. And Paul will be standing there as well. So it's, there's different type of loves, but I don't. I hope I don't give out that and tell everybody. I don't tell people on the bus or whatever.
No, but I will on a bus. If I see someone in a great outfit, I will say to them, "By the way, I love your coat." It just makes other people feel great, and if those people go off and have a good day, then they're going to spread some good into the world. And those people they've made feel good are going to spread some good, and that's what it should be about. I do think talking about spreading the joy and spreading the love, Sarah. I can absolutely see that in your work actually, because I love your use of color, but once again. There are some people who will use color and it will be really bold. It'll be really bright, almost neons, or clashes of colors. I still think there is. I'm going to use the word subdued color to your work,
Yeah,
but that's too strong a word. Your work is very much you as a person, that the color is there, the joy is there, but we're not going to go and push it too loudly into
no,
the world. I remember when I came to the Festival of Quilts, I picked out so many pieces on your wall that were lovely. But I do love your fried egg. I mean, I do love your fried egg. I mean, that's just so out there. Where do you take your inspiration from?
I never cook a fried egg. I like poached egg myself, but I've always, I suppose, it goes back to my father really being a graphic designer, and he designed logos for companies. He had his own design practice, but there's a guy called Saul Bass who was amazing. He did all the titles for the Alfred Hitchcock films and stuff. So I've got some lovely letters for Saul Bass and my father. Well, obviously I haven't got my father's ones, but I've got Saul Bass's ones. And so I've loved quirky things. And my father introduced me to Andy Warhol very early on, 1968. So I was, 9? He came home from America with an Andy Warhol carrier bag, paper carrier bag, with the soup can on it. And they were given out at a lecture, and so many people just ripped them open and put their coat in and their umbrella and everything. Was my father carried it home carefully. Then he framed it. So it was in over our dining room table when I was growing up. And the amount of friends came back from after school and said, "Why have you got a carrier bag framed?" You know. But that quirkiness I loved. And I've actually got over there, looking at it, a dot to dot of Andy Warhol that my father and I did when I was about 15, you know. So I've always been intrigued with him. But when we started going to America, or my brother moved to Rochester, he worked for Xerox, and we were lucky enough to go over and stay with him. And we went to a breakfast place, and they had a big fried egg painted on the wall. And that started my idea. So quite often in my collages, I'll end up doing some type of fried egg. And then one time I decided to actually make a quilt of it. But then I went on and made about 4 others in sort of my Andy Warhol range. So there's sort of a blue and green one and a red and purple, but it's still that image of a fried egg. I like images. I like logos. I like typography, lettering. Yeah, and I think that's just the way I've been taught and grown up with, really.
Yeah, I was going to
Mm.
say your dad was obviously a huge inspiration on you then,
Yeah,
wasn't he,
he was.
really?
Yeah, he was.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
he
Is
was.
your dad still around, Sarah?
No, he died 16, 17 years ago now. My mother passed away uh, about 12 years ago now. And I have a quilt that I did make for them. Bit of a funny story. I went to an antique quilt auction thing, and I sat on my hands because I had no money. Amy was in a buggy. We had no money. I could just about afford the train ticket into London to go and see this thing. And, I sketched it out and I came home and I did say to the lady that was selling it, would you mind if I make it? So I put that together and my parents had it. And I remember that it was one of the very first quilts I put into an exhibition, and it was the National Patchwork Championships. So that was at Hatfield House. It was way before Festival of Quilts. And I put it, and it wasn't great. None of the points matched. It was all blue and white stars. None of it. But I was pleased with it. And I took my father, and he was chuffed to see it. He was really great. And then the winning quilt was so embarrassing. The winning quilt was a big pictorial, a huge pictorial quilt. I've never liked pictorial quilts. And my father, just as they were about to give the award to this lady, very, very well deserved, huge amount of work. My father said, well, I wouldn't even put it on a bed in EastEnders. And it was I thought, that's it. My quilt career is Not
That
that
is
he ever watched
fantastic.
EastEnders, but he was very supportive in what I did. But no, he never saw any of this, and he didn't see me go from, because the last 15 years, I would say, a generous 10 years, 10, 15 years, I've only worked in linen. Occasionally I'll work in another, cotton, but very rare. I like linen. And I think a lot of people know me now, mainly because I work with linen. I think that's because not many people did at the beginning.
Sarah, when you were saying earlier about your stitching on the quilt that wasn't perfect, life is not perfect, is it? In fact, I think nothing is perfect. Things that are coming to my mind now, if you were to watch, I know this is a bit random thought, but say, for example, you were watching, Tom Daley do a dive and he gets the gold medal. He would replay that back and go, oh, but my left foot was just an inch out. Nothing is ever perfect.
No, my right toe was sticking up.
My right toe was sticking. That's what it would be with Daly. It would be toenail. His toe. Everything else is perfect.
Oh yeah,
Let's not
yeah.
even go talk about young boys in trunks because we've already talked about Bono and Bonkerton. It's taken a whole other place. This
Oh,
podcast.
I know. But
Um,
yeah, nothing is ever. Everybody is going to be judgmental of it wouldn't be right if you weren't judgmental of your things. Going back to Catherine Hepburn, she always says that, as long as you've pleased yourself and one person is happy, meaning you, then everybody else, it's just a bonus. And I definitely think that all the quilts I've made, bar ones I've made as a gift to somebody, I've made every quilt for me. And if somebody else likes them or they get accepted into QuiltCon or get accepted anywhere, and I've been incredibly lucky to have one piece acquired for the Quilters Guild for their permanent collection. That was about 5 years ago now, which is incredible. And then last year I had 2 pieces acquired by the International Quilt Museum of Nebraska. So for being a little quilter from Hertfordshire, I'm so touched with that. I am touched with that. Yeah. And they're
yeah,
pieces that the ones that went to the States, there were pieces I really didn't want to let go. They were very personal pieces to me, very. One actually I'd printed off some drawings of my father's, and I'd incorporated that into it. It's the only time I've done it. But then they asked 2 or 3 times about purchasing them or acquiring them. And I thought, you know what, they live on the back of the sofa, and to have them somewhere like that is it's a real bonus. Yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
let them go. I know they're in safe hands, and Caroline Ducey, one of the curators, she'll look after them. I know she will.
Coming towards the end now. Then, I mean, it's been interesting finding out a lot more about you because, as I say, you are such a quiet and kind of private person, but then we have this amazing joy and color coming through from your work. And like I say, fried eggs, brilliant. And it's been great to hear about the history with your dad. I love that, the fact that he shouted out that. To me, see, that's an expression of love from a
Mm.
parent. he doesn't need to turn around and go, I love you, Sarah, and I love your
Mm.
work. And the fact that he shouts out, I wouldn't put that on a penny stenders. It's just brilliant. What blocks do you think you've overcome in your life, Sarah, to get to where you are right now? And maybe what do you think you still have to overcome? What elements within your personality do you think, oh, I've got to learn to master that?
Hand on heart, and it's very difficult to try and come across that I genuinely mean it, and I do. I don't take anything for granted. I don't. And you've got to, even with friendships or anything like that, or whatever you learn, you only get out of a friendship what you put in. You can't just automatically assume that that friendship's good for life. I get over enthusiastic too much, and I get too OTT, and I do worry about that. I don't worry about it when I'm in it. Like, I met a lovely set of ladies this festival quilt. I had spoken to them a few times on Instagram. I think quite a lot of people know that I jump up and down in front of my quilts. I don't, I sort of jump. So they asked for a group shot. So I said, yeah, fine, we'll jump. And of course, I had them all jump. And then when I walked away, I thought, oh, perhaps they're not jumpy people. So I have to sort of rein it in, I think. They did. They were brilliant. And it's a great photo.
Yeah, but I think sometimes that's a great thing to do. We only learn in our lives, Sarah, when we are pushed into uncomfortable spaces. And I think that, they always say, don't they, that you only learn your real true lessons in life when things are very difficult. When you have lost a parent, when you have lost a friendship. This is when the growth comes. So I think sometimes you have to try these things. Tell those people to jump. If they don't like it, they won't do it again. But they might just discover they like it.
Yeah, there's still lots of things I want to achieve and lots of things I want to do, but don't ask me what they are because I haven't figured them out yet. Obviously, one is to teach with yourself in the States. Yay! That's going to be great.
It's going to be
Really looking
exciting.
forward to that. Really looking forward to that. And the thing with teaching is, the workshop I do the most of is the collage to quilt. I have learned so much from the students. There's lots of things I still want to achieve, but I haven't figured out what they are yet. There definitely won't be a book number 2. I'll never do that. Never in a million years. I loved the ones I did, but it was a one-off. But there are other things I want to do.
Well, we shall await in anticipation to see what those things are that you do, Sarah. I think you should do another book because your first one was brilliant.
Thank
But,
you.
who knows, you might change your mind on that. That's what life should be. It should be fluid. I think people who are set in their ways, I think people who have, I've always been worried when people have said, what's your 5-year plan? I used to think it was bad not to have one. And now I think it's actually bad to have one because, who knows what's going to happen in 5 minutes, never mind 5 years. And we change so much. How can you possibly plan for your life in 5 years? I look at where I am now at my age, 54 years old. I think about myself at 49. I was a completely different person.
Same
And
here.
and from where I was when I was 20, oh my goodness me, I was such an idiot at 20. I was such an arrogant idiot. So we're constantly learning and evolving. So how can you possibly have a 5-year plan?
I think when you look back on, there's a lot of particular magazines always interview, I don't know, people like, I don't know, Kate Winslet or people like that, and they'd say, what would you tell your 16-year-old self? And I think everybody, absolutely everybody, hand on heart, can say, don't be so worried about life or where the journey's taking you. And I think you can learn a lot from that. Yeah, I am worried about the future. I am worried about, will I still want to create? Will people still want to be inspired by me? And I say that, I had a lovely message over the weekend from a lady in New Zealand who just got my book. And, she wrote a huge monologue, which was absolutely so touching. But, that's not going to last forever. because there'll be a new book out next year, there'll be this, there'll be that, whatever. I know that, and I can't take that for granted. But I hope people are still interested in what I do later on. But if they don't, then I just make things for me. So life does send you a curveball. You don't know. Look at the way the world has turned out now with, angry people in the world, which is how these people can live on a day-to-day basis with that threat and worry and hurt. I take my hat off to them. I really do. So we're lucky. I don't have that much to complain about. An odd lottery ticket would be nice.
Yeah, I agreed. I think as well what you said there about if people, were to drop off and no one was looking at your work anymore, I cannot see that ever happening. But if that was to happen, you would still be happy in yourself because you're enjoying your creating. And I do think that is a key to life. I think people who are seeking validation from other people to try and fill the void in themselves will never be happy. And do you know how I know that, Sarah? Because I did that for years. I wanted everybody else to make me happy. And it doesn't ever fill you up. You have to fill yourself up in order to give to other people and be happy in yourself.
I remember we had 2 dogs. The first dog was a Cocker Spaniel called Cromwell, because he had a round head. So he was lovely. Then when he passed away, we got a Cavalier King Charles. And on his little biography that came from the pedigree thing, King Charles Spaniels are always eager to please. And I think that's what I would like on my headstone. Here lies Sarah, who's always eager to please. I'm very conscious about pleasing people. Pleasing friends, pleasing family, I want to please people, but I don't necessarily want it to have praise back.
Well, I think you've pleased a lot of people today in this
Thank
podcast,
you.
Sarah, who've been
Thank
listening. Apart from Bono, if Bono was listening, I don't think he'd be very happy. that will
Oh, I
that will
don't.
go down in history. He's not much to look at, but I think he'd be good in the sack.
I'd be quite happy to tell him. I'd be quite happy. I bumped into last couple of years ago, I bumped into Paul Weller. Very lucky to bump into him. And I sat down
Yeah.
and had a chat with him for about
You
20 minutes.
sat on the street with him, didn't you? And just
Yeah.
chatted. I mean,
And I was
I
telling
love
him
that.
that I didn't particularly like Clash, the Jam, and I thought that was a waste of time. And he was okay. Yeah.
But it's honesty. People love honesty. Janet Clare has this great, saying, which is, authenticity is magnetic, and she's absolutely right. If you're authentic and you're honest, since we're name dropping, I had a moment where I was friends with Noel Edmonds
Oh,
because I knew
yeah.
his makeup artist wife,
Right.
who just happened to start dating him and then invited us to his house. And it was, I threw myself at him because I fell over his dog. And so I went to shake his hand, fell over his dog, which was called, I think it was called Chips, because he had a cat called Fish and a dog called Chips. Of course he did. And I fell over this dog and sort of, threw myself at him. But I do remember him saying to me once, "You do have a way of kicking down the door, don't you, Rachel?" Now, I don't think that was particularly in a positive way, because I think when I met him, I probably wasn't. This was quite a few years ago, and I think I probably was still a little bit on the wrong side of being, as you say, a little bit out there. But I still want to keep some of that. I still want to kick down those doors,
Yeah.
or perhaps
Of course
just
you do.
knock very loudly on them instead of kicking my way through them. Well, anyway, you have opened some doors for me, for yourself.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's been lovely. It's been lovely chatting today, Sarah. So long may it continue. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
You are
for
very
having me.
welcome.
All right. And I love you, Rachel.
I love you more, as what's her name says in Tangled. I do love you, Sarah.
All right. Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Just before you go, lovely listener, if you are a business and you're thinking, how do I get my message out there? Well, you could do it on this podcast. All you have to do is reach out to me, Rachel@breakingtheblocks.com. The details are below in the box. Thank you so much to everybody who's subscribing, listening, liking, leaving comments, and just generally enjoying the podcast.